Full-time occupation, Benjamin Netanyahu approves a plan to end Israel's war with Gaza, not by diplomacy, by force. Plus, the Department of Justice has opened a grand jury probe into ex-Obama officials and whether they pushed false Trump-Russia ties. And if you're here, you must be a big fan of the New York Post. I know I am, and boy, do I have some exciting news for you. Those stories and more today, Tuesday, August 5th. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. Israel is eyeing an end to its bloody and brutal conflict with Hamas, but getting to peace won't be peaceful. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has approved a plan to fully occupy the Gaza Strip and force Hamas to release the remaining hostages. The strategy comes as 19 former Israeli military, intelligence, and police chiefs are warning that the Jewish state is, quote, on the precipice of defeat. The group says that Israel has just had too many losses in Gaza and argues that there is no end in sight. The retired leaders also claim that Netanyahu is simply keeping the war alive in order to maintain a hold on the coalition that controls his government. And so they're calling for an end to the war in order to save the hostages that remain in Hamas's custody. And we talked about a couple of those hostages yesterday and the horrifying conditions that they're living in. Since then, Hamas has released even more abhorrent videos of hostages starving to death in their custody. Netanyahu says that he spoke with the regional head of the Red Cross to request their involvement in providing food and medical care to the remaining living hostages. Hamas claims that they're open to the idea, but they had demands for Israel to open permanent humanitarian quarters and to end airstrikes during the distribution of aid. 20 Israeli hostages are believed to be alive and still held in Gaza. Now to Washington, where the Justice Department is officially opening a grand jury investigation into Obama administration officials. What Attorney General Pam Bondi is alleging here is that the officials conspired to manufacture a scandal about President Trump's links to Russia during the 2016 campaign. Now, the move means that criminal charges are a possibility for people like former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, CIA Director John Brennan, and FBI Director James Comey. It all depends on what the grand jury decides to indict or not to indict. But the investigation is not without its hurdles, though. The statute of limitations could make it difficult for the Trump administration to charge certain offenses. The alleged evidence that led to all of this was made public last month by the current Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She sent a criminal referral to Pam Bondi, and now the DOJ seems to be acting on it. Gabbard will be Miranda Devine's guest on this week's Podforce 1, which drops tomorrow morning, so be sure to check that out too. And out of Montana and the story of Michael Paul Brown. Police are still on the lookout for the Army veteran accused of opening fire at a small town bar and killing 4 people. He then fled the crime scene wearing nothing but his underwear. At around 10:30 in the morning last Friday, authorities say that Brown walked into the Owl Bar in Anaconda and allegedly began firing. Now, this is a tiny little town of less than 10,000 people, about 25 miles outside of the city of Butte. After spraying bullets indiscriminately around the bar, Brown then escaped down a stone staircase pretty much naked. A surveillance photo released by police shows this incredibly gaunt man dressed only in black boxer briefs. Now, after the shooting, Brown allegedly stole a pickup truck with camping gear. Now, as I mentioned, it's a small town, and the bar owner knows the suspect. Brown actually lives next to the watering hole, so it's likely that the accused shooter also knew his victims. Now, family members say Brown struggles with mental health issues. He served in the Army from 2001 to 2005 and was deployed to Iraq. Adding another layer to this tragedy, his niece posted online calling her uncle, quote, a sick man who doesn't know who he is sometimes and frequently doesn't know where or when he is either. Stop the presses. Well, actually, start the presses. Our big story today is about us. The New York Post is expanding, launching the California Post early next year. And timing is, of course, everything. From the 2026 election for California governor to the World Cup matches in LA next summer, and of course, the Olympics heading there in 2028, it is the perfect time to shine a spotlight on the Golden State. Now, we didn't think it was fair to keep all of this iconic New York Post goodness in one place, so we are setting up shop in Los Angeles and bringing a bunch of talented editors, reporters, and photographers along with us. They're going to tackle news, entertainment, politics, culture, sports, and business just like we do here on the East Coast, but with less eat this bagel and I'm walking here and more eat this kale at a movie premiere. You get the idea. I am lucky now to be joined by the newly minted editor-in-chief of the shiny new West Coast paper and website, Nick Papps. So Nick, tell me, how did the idea for the California Post come about and why now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And the reason we're doing is we see a huge opportunity to expand the New York Post footprint on the West Coast. Now, the interesting thing is that the New York Post has a really large following already out there in California. And California is a really, really important part of the states that we want to bring all the New York Post attitude, emphasis to the West Coast. And we think it's a really good time to expand on our existing audience. But also there's so much going on the West Coast as well. You know, you've got a lot happening with AI. It's a really important economy, a lot of great sports happening over there. And of course, it's the home of entertainment. So all those really important things that the Post does so well, we think it's a great time to do all those things really well on the West Coast.
Yeah, just the sheer size of California in and of itself, there are so many industries that are just based there. Now, there are so many ways for people to get their news and their entertainment right now. I myself am a fan of getting it through this very podcast. So how will the California Post kind of just cut through that noise?
Yeah, I think cutting through it will be really important to have the right voice. And we know that the New York Post voice cuts through so well because it's direct. It talks in plain language and it stands up for the average everyday American. And I think that's going to give us our cut through because at the moment, those legacy media brands over the California don't necessarily represent the average person over there. So I think the cut through will come because we're representing what matters to those people in California. So that's going to be really important. So all those things you love about the New York Post, they're going to be replicated on the West Coast, but with a bit of a West Coast feel, because the West Coast is different to the East Coast, but I'm really confident the cut through will come because we've got that direct voice, and also we're going to be fighting really hard for those everyday Californians.
I love that the boldness and the directness of the New York Post is going to be able to be given through the lens of a California reader or viewer or listener. So of course I need to know, when are the readers and viewers and listeners in California going to get their dose of the Post? Tell us a bit about what you want it to be and look like and when they're going to be able to see it.
Yeah, so we're looking at starting early next year. So the next few months will be all about getting our team together, and it's going to be a sizable team over there on the West Coast, and we're looking for people that know the West, and know California, to get them on board. So there'll be a period of onboarding and then really ramping up our key areas that we have to concentrate on. As I mentioned, entertainment will be massive over there. Sports, you've got some amazing franchises over there. That'll be big for us. And then we're looking to double down on AI and those emerging industries you spoke about. So you've got defense taking off. AI, it's kind of the center of the universe, right? Over in California, it can be such an important industry right now, but in the years to come. And then there's politics. We've got some big elections coming up. Next year there's a lot of politics happening on the West Coast. And then you've got some other big things. We've got the Soccer World Cup. That's starting up, so we'll be in shape ready for Soccer World Cup, and obviously Olympics comes after that as well. So it's all aiming towards the start for early next year. But we fired the starting gun, if you like, yesterday, and now we're running 100 miles an hour.
2026 is going to be here before we know it. You said it, and for a second I was like, ooh, that's a while. And then I realized summer is almost over. Nick, before I let you go, I have to tell you, on behalf of your new West Coast staffers, we have really good snacks here in the New York Post New York office. So you better make sure you guys can compete there. Yeah,
I'm sure we'll make sure we look after our staff. It's just great to be on board, and I'm very excited about the future.
Nick Papps, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
First, Stephen Colbert, and now Gayle King. The star anchor of CBS Mornings might be the next highly paid and highly opinionated talent on the chopping block. Sources tell the Post that with Skydance soon to be in charge of things at CBS and their promise to end left-leaning bias at the network, the 70-year-old morning show mainstay may soon be hitting the unemployment line. Pointing to a steep ratings decline for King's show over the past few months, the source blames the progressive programming decisions of King and her executive producer, Shauna Thomas. Our insider says, quote, "The morning show audience wants optimism and cheer and joy, and what they were producing is at odds with audience expectations." Now, King's contract, which we hear is worth somewhere between $13 and $15 million is up next May. Good thing for you and me that you get all your morning news right here at the New York Postcast. And finally today, have you ever had a really bad night and woken up in a really bad mood and taken it out on people at work who didn't deserve it? Well, at least one Texas cop can relate to that. Officer Jennifer Escalera recently went on TikTok from her police car in her police uniform and promised to hand out tickets like Oprah giving out cars. You get a ticket, you get a ticket, you get a ticket. Quote, everyone is getting a ticket. Why, you ask, was everyone getting ticketed on this particular day? Because, dear listeners, Officer Escalera didn't get any, the night before. The caption of the TikTok post made a not so thinly veiled reference to her frustration over her unactive sex life. Some local residents weighed in with one calling it, quote, really inappropriate and disrespectful. Now, her TikTok post has since been taken down, and the officer's recent behavior is being investigated by the local precinct. I've always wondered what makes some traffic cops so very cranky. This was not a possible rationale that I ever considered, but I guess it makes sense. It also makes sense for you to see what else is happening at the New York Post in print or online, and then hit that like and subscribe button to the New York Postcast, wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. I'm not gonna ticket you if you don't, but I would if I could, because that is an egregious offense if I've ever heard one. See you tomorrow.